Kaline Primary says, "There is always a weakness, Isaac. Your existence is proof of that." And I thought that was savage. Hi guys, Geecher64 here, and today we're talking about the Orville New Horizons, episode 9, titled Domino.
Domino! Wow! Now!
First, I want to say I'm sorry this video is a few days late. I've been consistent all season long with getting my reviews up on Friday. This one's probably going to go live on a Sunday. It's the earliest I could get it up. Unfortunately, next episode 10, the final episode of the season, will probably be delayed until Sunday as well. But I just can't avoid it, unfortunately. And I do have some cool Orville videos after the final episode that I want to do as well, including an episode ranking. So looking forward to sharing that with you guys. If you're new here, the way that I do my Orville reviews is I do a breakdown. We walk through the episode. I tackle some specific plot points. I share my thoughts and kind of give my review as we're going through the episode. And then I kind of give a recap, general thoughts at the end. And yeah, with all that said, let's go ahead and jump into it. We open up the episode with a sweeping shot of the Krill City. I do like the design of the Krill City. We saw it in episode 4 this season. And as we're going through the city, we zoom in on Talea. She's meeting with some Moclan delegates. The Moclans obviously were expelled from Union in the last episode, and they're wanting to build a new alliance with the Krill. That was to be expected. We all knew that was probably going to happen here. And the Moclan ambassador says, "The Union imposes its values on other cultures, refusing to confront its own hypocrisy." That's a direct quote from the episode, and this is something I've talked about in a couple other episodes this season. The whole idea of the Union imposing its values on other cultures. I don't know if imposing would be, I think that's a little bit of a strong word, but the Union has definitely tackled some hard issues this season in regards to how far into alien cultures are they really going to push themselves, and how much are they willing to accept. It's been a very blurry line all season, and as I said, I've mentioned it before in regards to their dealings with the Krill and obviously their dealings with the Moclans. So you kind of get where the Moclan ambassador is coming from here. I don't agree with him, but he certainly has a valid perspective. So as the Moclans are proposing this alliance, they're saying, we're not going to follow Talea because she's a female. The only acceptable arrangement is for the Moclans to be in charge because, again, they won't take orders from Talea because she's a female. And you can definitely see the way that the Moclans, the way that they've written the Moclans and tackled the Moclan society has kind of changed a little bit. You could obviously argue that that's just the way that it's written, but from season to season, you could tell that the Moclans think a certain way about Moclan females, but it really wasn't necessarily carried over into their perception of females of other races, at least initially. But the more we saw the Moclans, the more they kind of wrote them and built them out to just be where they just don't like females, period. I actually like more of the nuance of the earlier one, where it was just like, hey, we run our society in a certain kind of way. And instead of just treating all females like they're less than, because that just makes them obviously, of course, be the bad guys. Of course, they're the bad guys if that's the way they're approaching things. And Talea, of course, says, well, I will enter this alliance, but the only way that I'm going to do this is if I'm on equal footing. It's equal command with the Moclans and the Krill. So after the opening credits, we jump right into the action with the Union fleet and tight formation defending Talea from the Kaylon. As mentioned, Talea was probably going to be their first target from where the Kaylon are situated, and that's actually exactly what happened. The Kaylon attacks Talea. They're in tight formation. It happened so fast because they cut directly from the opening credits to this scene. I thought they were in a simulation. I was like, whoa, they're cutting right to the Kaylon attacking. This is crazy. What's going to happen here? But the Union has a new weapon, and they deploy it, and it completely decimates the attacking Kaylon. Like, completely destroys them, destroys every single ship.
Now that's a lot of damage!
Even the Orville crew is in shock by the utter decimation of the Kaylon. And apparently Isaac and Burke both work together to create this device, and the radius of destruction is limited only by the amount of power available to feed to it, which of course plays out in the episode. I will say that one thing I wish they would have done is put more breadcrumbs and more thinking out how this device worked in previous episodes, because it does seem to kind of come out of nowhere. There is a breadcrumb or so, if you want to point to when they found Themis That kind of ties back to that. But overall, this device seems to just pop out of nowhere. It's one of the only critiques I think I have about this episode is just the fact that this device wasn't really set up, and we kick off the episode and they're using it, and you're like, wait a minute, where'd this thing come from?
Wait a minute.
Apparently, the way the device works is all of the Kaylons are connected to a synchronization matrix, except for Isaac, who's no longer a part of that matrix. Is the reason he's not affected by the device. And the device basically hits that matrix and, like dominoes, just cascades and destroys all the Kaylon network, which is one of the use of the title here, Domino.
Domino!
And of course, this does bring up a discussion of how the weapon should be used between the Orville talking with the admirals, and ultimately it's up to the Union Council as far as how they're going to proceed forward with using this device, because if they do end up using it, it has the ability to completely wipe out the Kaylon completely, and that's genocide. So it's a big question that they have to deal with in this episode. And they do bring up Timus in this episode by name from episode 7 of this season as an example of the Kaylon maybe evolving. Of course, the counter argument is that Timus is only evolved because he was modified. That's the counter argument there. Of course, Charlie is certain of what they're gonna do. They have to use the weapon. It's either them or us, and that's the way she looks at it, and that's pretty much the way she's looked at it all season, even though she's getting along with Isaac now and understands that, Timus is different and that not all of the Kaylon are bad. It's still a matter of it's either them or us. That's the way she looks at it. She still wants to get rid of the Kaylon. So we find out the Union Council debate was somewhat heated, or very heated. I mean, it's a big discussion to have. We don't actually see that discussion, but we don't really need to. They decide that what they're going to do is use the weapon as a deterrent to ward off the Kaylon instead of destroying them. And then if last resort is obviously to destroy them. So the Orville goes alone with the weapon to the Kaylon homeworld, and the Kaylon try and stop them on approach to the planet, but the Orville weapon just wipes out multiple waves of Kaylon before the Kaylon finally realize, well, we don't really have a defense against this weapon. We can't do anything. All right, we'll escort you down to the planet. We'll meet with the Kaylon primary and have a discussion. And after a full season of living in fear from the Kaylon, it's demonstrated just about, if it's not shown, it's talked about in some way in almost every episode this season. You can definitely feel that the Union and the Mocklins and the Krill, all biologicals are living in fear of the Kaylon. The fact that Orville is just so easily able to get in there and destroy the Kaylon ships with this new weapon, it really demonstrates just how powerful this weapon is, and it sits in stark contrast to how much fear they were sitting in before, because now they hold all the power. We get another sweeping shot, just like the Krill city sweeping shot before. This one of the Kaylon home planet. We kind of saw that obviously in episode 2 as well. And as I've said before, establishing shots are good. I mentioned it before. Some people kind of don't like the establishing shots. Some people think it's a waste of money. Establishing shots work well here. They show us what that planet looks like with Kaylon running it. I mean, that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It gives us scope and the feel of each location that they're in, as opposed to just seeing people standing in a room talking. So Grayson, Mercer, Admiral Halsey go down to discuss terms with the Kaylon primary, and they also take Charlie and Isaac. And I did think it was kind of strange that they're taking Charlie and Isaac, the creators of this device, down to the planet. It seems like, and you find out this a little bit later in the episode, but even initially, before I found this out, I was like, why did both of them go down? Like, they're the creators of this device, which we know at this point. And we find out later that they're the only ones who can really operate and shut down the device. They're the only two capable. Seems like you'd want to try and keep them as far away as from each other as possible in case the Kaylon did decide to grab them, or if one of them ends up being shot down in a shuttle. You probably don't want both of the operators of your device to get killed at the same time. Yeah, so I did think it was kind of weird that they went down together. Of course, ultimately the Kaylon capitulate. They decide, hey, we don't really have a choice. We don't have a defense against your weapon. Maybe we'll find a defense against your weapon later. But they're also seemingly kind of confused by the fact that the Union doesn't seem to want to enslave them or destroy them. So they're kind of confused as far as why they aren't just using it to wipe them all out. So after the Kaylon primary says they will find a weakness in this device later, Isaac says, no, you won't. And Kaylon primary says, there is always a weakness, Isaac. Your existence is proof of that. And I thought that was savage. Then we cut back to Earth, and we got another Malloy song. It's always good when we see Malloy bust out the guitar and bust out a song, and this time Charlie's joining in on the song. The crew's back on Earth, as I said. They're at Grayson's cabin, or Grayson's father's cabin, who I guess it's her cabin now, and they're just chilling and hanging out, and they're finally able to relax because the Kalon threat has been neutralized. This is one of my favorite parts of the season because it's just the characters we like interacting with each other. There's no life or death struggle, no moral quandaries. We know things are probably going to go bad from here. We know this is the calm before the storm, but it's nice to just sit back with the crew. You know, this is one of the things that what makes the Orville work so well, particularly in this season, is that we like these characters and, you know, we want them to succeed, and it's fun just seeing them interact with each other. Whether it's Gordon singing or Bortus and Clyden trying to crack a walnut unsuccessfully, or Isaac, Claire, and the kids watching the Aurora Borealis outside. Like, all of these are like little moments that really showcase the strength of the characters. So Charlie's talking to Ed and says that, you know, they should have destroyed the Kalon when they had the chance. And for once, I'm like, oh, she does have a point, because she says Isaac and Themis may have proved they aren't all evil, but this agreement wasn't a moral awakening. The Union forced them to comply. But as Mercer says, we shouldn't kill if we don't have to, and in this case, we didn't have to. So, again, they both have valid arguments here. We see a couple Union officers steal the device from Union Central, and it's revealed to be Admiral Perry, who has coordinated getting the device and delivering it to Talea and the newly formed Moclan-Krill Alliance. I guess I wasn't too surprised when Talea gave the order to shoot down the Admiral's shuttle after the device has been delivered. The Admiral's going to go turn himself in for treason for what he did, and you know, Talea's like, all right, well, just take out that shuttle because we don't want them to know about our alliance. They're gonna find out soon enough, but I don't want them to find out right now. They find out basically immediately anyway, so it was kind of pointless. It seemed to go against the whole idea of Talea making more tactical decisions, because that seemed more like a Moclan decision, and this probably would have been a good instance to actually demonstrate some friction between the Moclan commander and Talea, because they're supposed to be in some kind of joint leadership, at least what was shown earlier in the episode, and I think that would have been this would have been a good opportunity to kind of show their different leadership styles and have some friction, and then shoot down the Admiral's shuttle, with Talea saying, yeah, maybe we don't need to do that. But ultimately, it just seemed like it was just a decision that was made by Talea just to demonstrate to the audience that Talea is an evil person.
I'm the bad guy.
Of course, the Orville tracks down the shuttle, or the remnants of the shuttle, since it's now, you know, dust, and they see, you know, that Admiral Perry's been killed by a Moclan and Krill weapons. So now they know that there's an alliance. Again, that whole shooting out of the skies seemed to just be a demonstration of Talea's evil. But Bortus says that the Moclans would probably take the device to a Dr. Koba, who's a Moclan, apparently one of the smartest Moclans to ever live. So they have an idea of where he is, and they head to that research facility. So the Orville shows up and checks out this planet, and luckily they're jamming this the signal so they can't be spotted.
Radar, sir. It appears to be jammed.
But the amount of Krill and Moclan ships in orbit around this planet is just astounding, and you can tell there's going to be a big space battle coming up. The power core on the planet apparently has enough power to boost the device to wipe out all Kalon in the galaxy. So the Orville and the Union decide they're going to form an alliance with the Kalon to get the device back. And at first the Kalon offer to go alone because the humans are inept. They're the ones who lost the device in the first place. The Kalon agree to the temporary alliance. And the plan is to get in the facility, scan the device while the ships fight in orbit, and the Pterodon fighters escort the ground crew to the facility. And the Kalon primary wants to go on the ground mission because he doesn't trust Isaac, as was demonstrated earlier, and he doesn't trust the Union since they're the ones who lost the device in the first place. Kind of a fair assessment of that situation, considering it is a device that's going to wipe out all the Kalon. And apparently their orders are, if they can't disable the device, they have orders to destroy it. And I was kind of surprised by this, considering it's the only deterrent that the Union has. It was demonstrated how overwhelming the Kalon force is. Without that device, the Union are sitting ducks at the Kalon, decide they want to attack and wipe out Earth or any of the other Union planets. I mean, maybe they could build another one, but by that point, you'd probably be completely decimated. We saw what a a Kalon decimated Earth looks like at the end of the last season, season 2. But it's a bold move. Let's see how it plays out for him. So as the Union fleet attacks, the Krill and the Mocklins are like, well, this is going to be over soon because they completely outmatched the Union ships. The Union ships are being destroyed left and right. Hundreds of people are definitely dying in this space battle, this huge space battle that's happening. But then the Kalon show up, and then we got an even bigger battle on our hands. And we see the Pterodons finally. I've criticized the lack of the Pterodon this season because in the first episode of this season, they set up this Pterodon with a whole sequence with Malloy zooming around the ship. They're talking about, oh, look at this great design fighter, and we haven't seen it all season. Finally, it took all the way to episode 9, but we're finally seeing the Pterodon in action here in this episode. And Malloy and Lamar are flying the Pterodons along with some additional fighters as well. They're escorting the ground crew in their shuttle, which is cloaked. Of course, Grayson, Kiali, Isaac, Burke, and Kalon Prime are the ground crew, and they're navigating through this massive ship fight in orbit around them, and then they get down into the atmosphere and through the clouds, and they're just caught in an onslaught of Mocklin and Krill fighters that are also chasing them, so it's completely hectic. And this entire third act here is a movie. Like, I was blown away by the effects and the scope of this battle. It was huge. I watched this on a 120-inch screen and it looked amazing. Like, it did not feel or look like a television show. Like, it felt like, hey, this could have been a movie. Like, it was really good quality. With the shuttle damaged, the ground crew jumps with their egress packs, with these jet packs, kind of zooming around like the Rocketeer. They got to hit terminal velocity before they can activate them and land safely. But it's a really cool, like, skydiving scene as they abandon the shuttle because, you know, they can't land with it. And there's phaser fire all around them, and fighters are trying to chase them down as they're zooming in and around this facility. It was a really good scene. And the ground crew does land and make it into the facility, and of course they're immediately hit with a firefight, and their forces split up. Grayson and Kiali do suppressive fire while Charlie, Isaac, and the primary go around the long way around to try and get to the device. Then we cut to Talea, and she's talking with the Mocklin scientist, and Talea's ordering the Mocklin scientist around, and it's just funny because as you've seen through this episode, Talea's making all the decisions. It doesn't seem like this is any kind of joint venture at all, like was set up at the beginning of the episode, and unless maybe she held off for more power and she got it, but we don't see that in the episode. But yeah, Talea's ordering around all the Mocklins, and it's just kind of weird because, as I said, I do think that would have been interesting if you actually had a Mocklin commander and Talea have friction throughout this episode. There's so much in this episode, I'm not really sure how much that would take away from the pacing or not, but I do think that would have been a cool addition to this episode. So we do get Talea fighting Grayson, and it was kind of strange because I'm like, Talea's just kind of walking through the corridors, and maybe she has 1 or 2 guards or something like that. I mean, this is the leader of the Krill people. Like, she's president of a planet. She's chancellor of a planet. And she's just walking around the corridor getting into fights with people, like, and she's only got like 1 or 2 guards. It was just, I get it. I get why it happened, but I did think it was kind of goofy. I'm like, you need more guards. You need more guards, Talea. And in this fight, Talea eventually does get the upper hand, and she's just before she's about to stab Grayson, Kiali shows up and knocks out Talea. Isaac, the Kalon primary, and Charlie break into the room where the device is being held, but they can't shut it down. So Charlie just decides, hey, well, I may be able to shut down the core, although Dr. Koba, who's the Mocklin Einstein says, it'll take hours to shut down the core because there's so many safeties in place. But she's like, well, I'm going to try anyway. And the Mocklin scientists try and run away, but the Kalon primary blasts all of them in the back as they're trying to exit the room. And then moments later, we see the last Mocklin who's left in the room pull out a weapon, and Isaac shoots it right out of his hand and then lets that Mocklin run away. And the Kalon primary is asking, Isaac, why didn't you terminate that Mocklin? And Isaac says it was not essential. And Charlie says that the Kalon primary could learn something from Isaac in regards to, valuing life and approaching the situation not from, destroying all of the life. And it really shows the fact that Charlie has grown throughout this season. So Grayson and Kiali with the capture of Talea show up and regroup with the rest of the ground team, and Charlie and Isaac, they can't shut it down. They can't shut the device down. So Charlie's going to try and trigger an overload, which will destroy everything, including the outpost and a chunk of the planet, because of the amount of power that they're talking about here. And Charlie decides to stay behind to work on the overload, because there's no guarantee that it'll work unless she's there working on it. And the rest of the team does escape. The core explodes and Charlie is killed. And it's actually a great cap to her story this season. It really gives a lot of weight to the amount of screen time that they gave her through this season. I did see a lot of criticism as far as the amount of screen time that she was given this season. And to a certain extent, I agree with certain aspects of that. I do think there was a little bit too many scenes where it was rehashing things we already knew, which is that she hated the Kaelon. And it did seem to take away from some of the established characters, but I never disliked the character. But regardless, I think this episode really justifies Charlie as a character this season and makes everything tie together and work great. So the Union and the Kaelon retreat as the energy wave from the planet catches several Krill and Moclan vessels in orbit, completely destroying them. Because, as I said, there's a massive amount of power down that planet. Back on the Orville, Captain Mercer asks the Kaelon primary if the Kaelon will leave peacefully or if the battle is still on, if the battle is not over. And, with the device destroyed, the Union's in a bad spot. If the Kaelon decide, you know what, well, the device is gone, you don't have a defense anymore, That's why I thought it was kind of funny when Grayson kind of pokes the bear a little bit with the Kaelon primary on behalf of Charlie's sacrifice, because she's obviously upset that Charlie was lost on the mission, which is perfectly justifiable. But considering that that Kaelon primary is all that stands between you and the destruction of the entire human race, it seems like you might want to be a little bit nicer to the guy. And the Kaelon primary doesn't understand why Charlie sacrificed herself for the Kaelon. He doesn't understand. He doesn't process it. And Isaac says that's what he's attempted to communicate with the Kaelon, that these biologicals aren't like the builders. They are his friends. And it's a great scene, a nice scene. It ties everything together with Isaac this season as well. There's a lot of things that really come together in this episode that tie in a lot of things from this entire season. And then we get a scene with Mercer talking to Leia in the brig, and Ed really wants to take Anaya, his daughter, back with him, wants to give Anaya a home. And Talea's like, well, if you release me, I'll arrange it. And he's like, no, you're contemptible. I'm not gonna do that. I can't protect you this time, and I'm not gonna do that. And she's like, well, as long as I'm a prisoner, you're never gonna see Anaya. And
I'm the bad guy.
then back on Earth, we get the admirals as well as the Union president, who is Tron. I know I've mentioned that several times this season, but that's because it was cool enough to get President Tron multiple times this season. And they offer Kaelon a provisional seat on the Union Council with an eventual full instatement to the Council later, depending on how everything works out and if they abide by the rules the Union's laid out. And, the Kaelon says the representative democracy is an inefficient form of governance. But as General Halsey says, one thing you can say about democracy is that other forms are even worse. And that is 100% true. Ultimately, the Kaelon do agree, and I completely get why the Union would go ahead and bring the Kaelon into this, because, the Kaelon could destroy them, so making them a part of it obviously makes sense. But it is kind of weird considering they kicked out the Moclans in the last episode for far less than what the Kaelon did to them. So if you're actually running that in contrast, of course, everything has nuance to it, and the Moclans and the Kaelon are obviously very different, but arguably, the Kaelon did far more damage to the Union than the Moclans did this season. And then we get a scene with the memorial for Charlie, with Isaac saying a few words, even bringing up the pancakes as she just uses butter and no syrup, which I think is completely terrible. Put syrup on your pancakes.
That would be great. Okay.
As I said, this was a great send-off to this character. I was so happy that they decided to make this decision, or as Talea said earlier in the in the season, I'm glad they had the balls to kill off this character, because it gives so much weight to her journey through this season. There were times, as I said before, where her hatred for Isaac and the fact they kept rehashing it multiple multiple episodes that it was just a bit much, but we did kind of get to know the character, and her journey through this season caps off here. And again, I think it works well. I think that this completely strengthens her character. If she did not die in this season, I think the way that she would be perceived is different, but because she did die, her story seems to actually have a point and completion to it. I think this episode was awesome. It very much felt like a movie. Like when I was watching it, it felt like a movie. It's high on my list of episodes for this season. Like I said before, I'm going to do my episode ranking after the series is over. And this is near the top. Like, this is probably right behind episode 6. Episode 6 is probably still my top. But I don't know. I'm shuffling around all the time. This was a great episode. This really felt like a culmination from everything that was built out this season with the Krill, the Mocklins, the Kalon. All of those issues are coming to a head here in this episode, which does have me wondering what they're going to do for the final episode, episode 10. This episode had amazing effects, as I said, that cannot be understated. The pictures aren't really going to do it justice. You really kind of have to watch it to kind of get what I'm talking about. The effects in this episode are better than anything I've seen in Star Wars or the MCU shows. It's better than any of the effects I've seen on Disney Plus. The scale is enormous. It's the space battle with the fleet, the fighter battle in space, the jump sequence, everything. It all looks really great. You can tell that some time was actually taken to make this look good, as opposed to a lot of other shows that kind of just push out content out there and they really don't spend a whole lot of time, or the VFX artists don't have the amount of time or money, whatever the case is. You can definitely tell on some other shows I've seen over the last few years that they kind of get pushed out there and the effects aren't really ready to go yet, but they push it out anyway. This actually feels like some real time was spent in perfecting this episode. As far as criticisms go, I don't really have many. Pretty much every single episode or anything I review, there's always, I usually have some kind of critique or something, regardless of if it's minor. It's a lot of it's preference based on how I would deliver the episode. Like for me, I think that some breadcrumbs leading up to the device probably would have been better if you actually saw some breadcrumbs, some allusions to this device being developed throughout the season. I think it would have probably worked a little better, because it does just kind of seem to pop out of nowhere. That's one of the criticisms I have, and that really ties into the whole opening scene after the credits. Just it happens so fast and throws you into everything immediately. You don't know where this device came from. It kind of felt like a simulation. It's just like, wait a minute, oh, this isn't a simulation. This is really happening.
Just like the simulation.
I just felt it was kind of jarring way to kick off the episode. And as I said before, I definitely would have added in more friction between the Mocklins and the Krill, specifically to Leia. Have a Mocklin commander in there with and show that friction between the Mocklins and Leia, with the Mocklins and the Krill. Because as I said, they set it up to where they're trying to do a joint command, and Leia basically ends up running everything the entire episode. So it's like, well, why'd they even say that? But then again, if you put too many scenes in there with that friction, it is possible it could have taken away some of the pacing. I don't really know. I do think, as far as story-wise, I think it would have made a little bit more sense, but who knows? I don't know how it would have worked with that being in the episode. Like I said, I really like this episode. I don't know what they're going to do to top this in the next episode, episode 10. I don't know what's going to happen, but I can't wait to check it out. My review for the final episode will be delayed as well, so I expect that one on Sunday as opposed to Friday, which I've been putting it out, as I said before. I expect my review for episode 10 on Sunday. But what do you guys think? Were you impressed with the scope of this episode like I was? I thought the scope was great. That this was like a movie, like I said. And what was your favorite moment? Because there was a lot of really great stuff here in this episode. Comment and let me know. I want to thank everybody for checking out this video. Thank you, subscribers. All of you are awesome. And if you like this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff, or don't. I'm not a beggar. I'm DTruth64, and I'll always tell you the truth.